I haven't done a wrap-up, like a monthly wrap-up, since November. That means all of the books that I read in December, in January, and February, I have to talk about. It's a lot of books. 3 months worth of books in one video. Yes, it's going to be such a good time. I think around 30 books to talk to you guys about. Some were fantastic, 10 out of 10 would recommend, and others not so much, and that's what we're here to discuss. Before we go any further, I did want to say a very big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is this wonderful online learning community where millions of people come to learn about different skills or different talents that they want to pursue, with thousands of classes on topics like illustration, graphic design, photography, and so much more. One of my personal favorite classes that they have is video editing from beginner to pro. I personally love editing my own videos, so I'm always looking for different ways in which I can improve it and make better content for you guys. If you want to better your skills or pick up a new skill, Skillshare is the perfect place to do it. A premium membership gives you unlimited access to all of their classes, and it's less than $10 a month. They were kind enough to give me a link, which I will share with you guys down below, where you can get 2 months for free of their premium membership. So I would really recommend it if you're looking to start your creative journey or just have fun, really, because their classes can be really entertaining if you find the right one. Right, so now I guess I'm just gonna start talking about the first book that I read in the month of December, which was Queen of Nothing. This was one of my most anticipated releases of 2019. I don't know how she did it, but Holly Black obliterated my expectations and gave me so much more, like more than I could have ever imagined. And I feel like this is one of the best conclusions to any trilogy that I have ever read in my entire existence. Even looking at it now, it's been 3 months and it still fills me with so much happiness and so much satisfaction, because the ending and the arc of all of the characters, they were so well executed. I feel like Holly Black paid attention to all of her storylines and didn't leave anything hanging or anything unanswered, which I really appreciate, because sometimes authors kind of forget all of the little parallel storylines that they have and they leave us hanging. But Holly Black does no wrong, especially when she's talking about fairies, apparently. I can't say anything, of course, because this is the 3rd book in the trilogy, but if you're interested in reading The Folk of the Air, I think the trilogy as a whole is called. If you're interested in reading these books, I would highly recommend them. It's about fairies and humans and what happens when a human goes to live in the fairy world, and kind of like having to battle between not really fitting in but having to deal with it anyways, and it's just so freaking good. I will say The Cruel Prince is overhyped. The Wicked King isn't, but when I read The Cruel Prince, I was a bit underwhelmed. But then I read The Wicked King and it was like, so this is what everybody was talking about. Pick this up if you're looking for a good fantasy book filled with sexual tension and, you know, like, very good stuff. We love being intellectuals who speak about books. After Queen of Nothing, I picked up Paper Girls Volume 2, and this was a gift from BTS Little Beans, or Kira, and she kindly sent this to me. She is such a wonderful human being. I love her. I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. To be honest, I still have no idea what's going on. I know this is a graphic novel, and it's sort of a science fiction, fantastical story where this random species of aliens are invading Earth, and these 4 paper girls, like, they deliver the paper in the mornings, they get caught up in it because they were on their paper route when the aliens invaded, and now they're like stranded and everybody's dead and they're the only ones alive, and they're kind of like, what is going on? What the fuck? I'm not really sure where the story is going. Like, are they going to save the world? Are they going to end up dead? I have no idea, but it's really interesting, and it has some of the most beautiful arts that I've ever seen in a graphic novel. The combination of colors just stuns me every single time that I flip a page. It's so colorfully stunning, and we love to see it. And I do feel like colors tell a story in and of itself. So you're always looking forward to the next panel because you have no idea what you're gonna get. After Paper Girls Volume 2, I read a very, very terrible book that kind of ruined my last 5 Christmases, because this is a book that I read religiously year after year on Christmas Day because I thought it was the perfect Christmas book. And then this year, I guess my mind kind of has expanded. I'm a little bit more aware of social topics and, you know, like the whole shebang. So when I reread it for the 6th time in my life, I realized that this is a very misogynistic and very sexist, and it relies a lot on stereotypes, especially stereotypes that degrade women. I love that for me. As a woman myself, I enjoyed that profusely. I am talking about Let It Snow by John Green, Maureen Johnson, and Lauren Miracle. I unhauled this. I don't have it anymore. Thank God. So I can't show it, but
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Every time I looked at it, it gave me so much happiness and made me feel so much joy. And now every time I think about it, I want to punch John Green in the face. I wouldn't say punch because I'm not big on violence, but I would want to have a sit down with them and be like, what was going through your minds? Why did y'all think this was okay? This ain't even funny. I just really want to talk. The next book that I read was an audiobook, and it was We Met in December. Now this was like a random book that I saw on Scribd, and you know, it's free, so I was like, why not? So I started reading it, and it's basically about this girl. She moves to London and she's staying in this house with a friend, but it's also like a lot of different roommates, and they all split the rent, so it's not as expensive. And the main owner, she's like,
oh, I have rules, and rule number 1 is you can't date other roommates.
So of course, our main character falls in love with one of the other roommates. And I mean, yeah, it's been done, but sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel to make something good. In this case, though, it wasn't that good. It should have stayed in your draft, sweetie. That's just my opinion. I don't think this is a good book to spend the time. Honestly, before I was even halfway through it, I was just counting down the hours until it finished. This was definitely the worst case of clickbait that I have ever experienced. Like, you get this cover, it's snowing, they're freaking, you know, like spinning on the ice, and you're like, oh great, this is going to be a Christmas story. And then you find out it doesn't even happen in Christmas. Woo! The next book that I read in December was a collection of 12 holiday stories that were edited by Stephanie Perkins, and it was My True Love Gave to Me. Again, I was looking for a feel-good, fluffy, snowy, Christmassy book after the letdown of Let It Snow and then We Met in December, and then I was like, come on, I gotta hit it off with one of these Christmas books. So I tried with this one, and it was okay. This is another one of those books that I had read in previous years, and I just like to reread it every Christmas because it's just really nice. And even though this did not have the same problems as Let It Snow, like it was not misogynistic, it was not sexist, it did not rely on stereotypes, I just felt very disconnected from the stories. The stories felt very surface level, and I know in a sense they are short stories, but in my defense, like in the defense of my opinion, I have read some short stories that really, like, you know, they hit me in the heart, they hit me where it matters. You don't need a large amount of pages to make an impact. So I don't think that the fact that these are short stories should excuse the fact that I didn't feel a connection with them. The next book that I read in December was The Well of Ascension. Look at her shine! The Well of Ascension, written by Brandon Sanderson. This is the sequel to The Final Empire, which is the start of the Mistborn trilogy. So this is the sequel, obviously. This was honestly a challenge for me. I did not think that I was going to feel motivated enough to finish this, but turns out that promising the whole internet that I was going to read both this and the last book in the trilogy, it really puts a fire under your ass. We follow this girl called Vin, and she is what is known as a Mistborn. She can control metals, which is, in this world, a big deal, because that means you're a bad bitch. And she is. Vin is just one of the most kick-ass, amazing, powerful women that I have had the pleasure of being in a journey with. She just makes the story so hardcore. And all of the characters as well, like we also have another character that I really love called Elend, and I did not just look for his name in the book. I'm really bad with names, okay? I'm so sorry. Yeah, I really just can't say anything because it's the continuation of the events in the Final Empire. But if you're interested and you're looking for a high fantasy, action-packed, kind of feels like a movie when you're reading it type of novel, then I would really suggest the Mistborn trilogy because it's so beautifully crafted. I just think that he is a master of words, and the way that he builds a world and builds characters, and the way that he deals with certain situations, and the way that everything overall is crafted is so magical, and you never want to put this book down. After I read The Well of Ascension, I had to pick up the last book in the Mistborn trilogy, The Hero of Ages. If y'all thought The Final Empire was intense, and then you read The Well of Ascension and you're like, oh, it cannot get better than this, sweetie, you're in for a wild ride. Wait, I just realized. Does it? We know that ending a trilogy isn't always the easiest thing to do. We've read Mockingjay, we've read Allegiant, we've read multiple trilogies that just don't cut it for us, especially in the last book. So of course, reading the last book in the Mistborn trilogy, I was a bit apprehensive. I was like, I don't want you to ruin this for me. I love these characters so much. Please don't mess this up. And he did not disappoint. And by he, I mean our king, Brandon Sanderson. You get so invested in the story and the characters feel like family, and it's just such a cool experience. At times I was like, hold up,
I can't breathe.
The last book that I read in December was The Red Scrolls of Magic, written by Cassandra Clare. The Red Scrolls of Magic follows Alec Lightwood and Magnus Bane as they go on their honeymoon, but it's not as cute as it sounds because there is a demonic cult involved. People have been dying, and apparently Magnus Bane is the prime suspect. So everybody's kind of like freaking out. Alec is like, did you really start a demonic cult? And Magnus is like, I don't remember. We just get to learn a lot more about them and their relationship, which has always taken kind of like a back seat in the Shadowhunter Chronicles because they're not really the main characters. So it was really fun to read from their perspective. The first book that I read in January was Children of Virtue and Vengeance. I'm going to be honest, the first 100 pages aren't the best. When I struggle a little bit at the beginning of a book, I always tend to give the book 4 stars because if it didn't sell me since the beginning, why would it be 5 stars? But the second half of this book was so brilliant and it was so well done that it deserves 5 stars. Like, I could not give it anything less but 5 stars. This was a worthy follow-up to Children of Blood and Bone, and I cannot wait to see what else Tomoe Yami comes up with. Again, I can't really say much about Children of Virtue and Vengeance because this is a follow-up to the events of Children of Blood and Bone, but I will say there's magic, there's clans, and there's a war, obviously. And there's bad people and good people. Wow! After After Children of Vice and Virtue, I picked up my very first webtoon, which was BTS's Save Me, and I read this because of Katie from Katie's Book Nook. I won't say that she forced me, but she heavily persuaded me to read this, and honestly, like, the best decision of my life. I love crying. It's not like I need the hydration in my body, I guess. We have 7 main characters, of course, inspired by the 7 members of BTS. There's like this one character that can control time and he can travel through it, and he's reliving the same day trying to save all of them because terrible and tragic things are happening to each of the members, and he's trying to save them all because, you know, there's like trigger warnings for suicide and self-harm and trauma, basically, like trauma overall, abuse, murder, like so much dark stuff goes down. Sis, it tore me apart and it broke my heart and it called me weak. And it was not wrong. After the webtoon, I picked up volumes 4, 5, and 6 of Death Note, the Black editions. These are the last 3 volumes in this manga series, and this is actually my very first manga series that I have completed. I feel like with every volume, the story got so much more intense and so much more intricate, always having to be on your toes because these characters are so freaking intelligent and you never know what they're going to do next, and it's so infuriating and it gives you so much anxiety, but it's all good because it's so entertaining and you don't want to put them down. I just feel like this is such an interesting manga, especially if you're like beginning to enter the world of manga. I feel like this is a very good start. I randomly decided to pick up Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban. I was just really in a Harry Potter mood. What can I really say about Harry Potter that I haven't already said or that anybody else hasn't already talked about? Just like, hi. Moving on to February, the first book that I read in February was The Way I Used to Be, written by Amber Smith. Trigger warning for sexual assault and suicidal tendencies and depression and anxiety. This is a very hard book to read, but I also feel like it's such an important read as well. I feel like they did such a wonderful job in portraying such a sensitive topic. Amber Smith did it with so much respect and so much responsibility, and I really respect that. If you're up for it, if you feel comfortable reading about topics like this, I would really recommend that you guys check this book out and take some time to read this because I feel like everyone can learn something from The Way I Used to Be. It's very raw, and I really appreciated this book, and this was actually sent to me by Kira because we sent each other our favorite books, and she sent this to me and she was like,
You gon' die.
and she was right. After The Way I Used to Be, I read probably my favorite book of the month, and it was so perfect to read in February as well, and oh my god, just thinking about it makes me all warm and mushy in the inside. I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Oh my god, I did not know what I was getting into when I picked up this book. I thought it was just going to be another typical contemporary rom-com-y type of book, and it is, but it's so much more. Like, remember back in the almost beginning of this video when I was like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel to make something interesting? I feel like that's what happened with this book. They took, like the author, they took something that's been done over and over again, and they shaped it and they sculpted it and they delivered it in a way that was refreshing and was interesting to read, and it made your heart melt and made you fall in love with the characters and the story and their interactions and the sexual tension. Everything about this book delivered. Like, sexual tension, check. Amazing character development, check. Amazing storyline, check. It's about self-discovery, and there's also a disability rep in this book, which is fantastic, and she's also a character of color, so that's always amazing. Just thinking about it makes me so happy because it's such a feel-good book. Yes, it follows a formula, but it does it in such a way that it feels brand new. And honestly, I just want to reread it. Like, thinking about it and talking about it, I just want to reread it all over again. Kira also sent me Educated, written by Tara Westover. I am not known for reading memoirs. I think I've only read like 2 memoirs in my whole entire life. So I was a bit hesitant going into this book because I was like, I'm probably going to have a hard time getting through this. I'm not the best at reading nonfiction because I just get very easily bored. I will admit the first 50 pages, they were a bit rough to get through because I was like, what is this book even about? I have no idea what I'm reading. Why is this even important? Like, why should I care about your story? And then one day I just got home and I was like, you know what? Let's read 150 pages of this book. And I did. And I was so engrossed, I didn't even realize it was like 1 a.m. and I had read over 150 pages. Educated tells the story of Tara Westover and her family and how they don't believe in the government, they don't trust the system, they don't trust doctors, they don't trust anything about society, so they live secluded from everything else. They grow their own food, they make their own clothes, they deliver their own babies. When you read this and you read about how she grew up and how she never even went to school because her parents don't believe in that, they also believe that the end of the world is coming, so they're like always prepared for the end of the world. They stockpile water, food, and it's so insane. Like, no matter how I describe it to you, you won't understand what I'm talking about unless you actually read it. And it's such a wild type of life that you would think it would be impossible to get out of it, and it almost is, because Tara Westover, she talks about her struggle of trying to find who she really is outside of her family, but feeling such a sense of loyalty for the people that nurtured her and the people that cared for her that it's almost impossible for her to leave them behind because she feels like she's betraying them. And I also think this is being turned into a movie, so you might as well read the book so you can be like, hey y'all, I read the book. After Educated, I listened to another audiobook, which was Love Boat Taipei. I was very excited for this book, and it has Taiwanese rep, and it's basically like this summer camp in Taiwan, and our main character, her parents kind of force her to go. She's never really been proud of her Asian side, and she's always kind of tried to hide it in a way, but she goes to the summer camp and things change and love is found and there's a love triangle and it's basically like drama for teenagers, and I wasn't there for it. I got tired halfway through. I just kind of wanted it to end. I feel like it was all just very surface level and it didn't deliver. After Love Boat Taipei, I picked up We Should All Be Feminist, which is a 20 to 25 page essay about why we should all be feminists and basically explaining the whole thing. And I picked this up because through time, I've listened to snippets of this speech, but I wanted to actually read the whole thing and get the full context. And I have read some reviews that say that some of her concepts and some of her ideas are a bit outdated, so I would keep that in mind if you do end up reading it. But I still feel like this should be required reading for everyone. It's a quick read and it's an important read, and I feel like everyone can learn something from this, so like it won't hurt you to read this. It's literally less than 50 pages and it goes by like that. Then I read King of Scars, written by Leigh Bardugo, and I have been trying to read this for like a year. Like, not even kidding. I've picked this up more times than I can count. And for some reason I always put it down before I even reached the 50 page mark, but February I was just like, okay, let's read it, let's get it over with. And I love Nikolai Lantsov. He's probably the only redeemable thing of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, so I thought that a book that followed his trajectory and kind of focused more on him would be a lot more interesting. And even though it did have its enjoyable parts, you know what I mean? I don't really have much to say about this one either. Like, it was okay. Yeah, it was okay. Then I picked up another book that Kira sent me, which is a thriller called Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. And this book played games with my mind. And at first you have no idea what's going on. You're like, you're interested. You're like, okay, I don't know where this is going, but I'm interested to see. And then it goes places that you didn't even think was going to go, and it kind of throws you in for a loop, because you're like, you think it's going to be one thing, and then it's a completely 180 and you're like, wait, what? And it's those types of books that when you get to the end, you kind of want to read the whole thing again to see if you can see little foreshadowings. This story follows a girl who has a one-night stand with this random guy that she meets at a bar, and then next day at work she finds out that he's her new boss, and she also finds out that he's married, and she befriends his wife. You know, it's weird, sweetie, but it's a good weird, and it's a very interesting read. It's an amazing thriller. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. The last book that I read in the month of February was The Dragon Republic, written by R.F. Kuang. This is the sequel to The Poppy War, and if you know me, then you know that I am a big supporter of The Poppy War and Rin, which is our main character, and Neza, and Zutara vibes, and Kate, and just everything about this series or this trilogy. There's gods, and you can kind of channel the gods through you, and you can use their power. Our main character, Rin, her god is the Phoenix, so she can control fire. There's also water gods, wind gods, earth gods. This is Avatar for adults, and with a lot more trigger warnings. The Dragon Republic was so intense and was so action-packed, and so many things happened that I did not see coming that kind of broke my heart, but I understand why R.F. Kuang did it, but it's still heartbreaking, and I still need like a few months to recover.
No, I'm still sad. It didn't work.
If you're looking for an action-packed, high fantasy with amazing characters, an amazing storyline, Zutara vibes, Avatar for adults, just pick up The Poppy War. You will not be disappointed, and you will thank me. So there you have it. So those are all the books that I read in December, January, and February. I am never going to skip another wrap up ever again, because this was torture. But like good torture. I had fun. I hope you guys had fun too, hopefully. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
You nice, keep going.